Okay, so now we're going to start with solving radical equations. It's still essentially the same thing as solving a regular equation, where the goal is to get the variable isolated and by itself. The only thing that you have to remember is that the opposite of a square root or a radical is going to be squaring both sides. So the other thing you have to remember is that if something is inside of a radical, you can't do anything to it until you get rid of the radical. So the opposite of a radical is squaring, and everything inside is trapped there until you free it by squaring it. So if you have an equation like this, where you have a radical and a radical together, then all you got to do is square both sides, and then those radicals kind of cancel out. So I just end up with negative 8 minus n equals 3n plus 32. And then it's just a regular equation. So I just solve that like the ones from before. I want to get my variable on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 3n on both sides. So I'll get negative 8, which is just going to come down, minus 4n equals 32. Then I'm going to get the variable by itself by getting rid of the numbers around it. So I'll start with whatever's further away, or, reverse order of operations. And I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Bring down my negative 4n. That's going to equal 40. And then to get rid of the negative 4, I divide. So I'm going to end up with n equals negative 10. So with this one, only one side is squared. Sorry, my nose is stuffy. So only one side is squared, but I can't do anything until I get rid of that radical, because on the right side, there's nothing outside the radical for me to get rid of. I have everything's inside, so it's stuck there. So I'm going to go ahead and square both sides to get rid of the radical, because I have to square both sides of the equation. I can't just do one. So on the left side, I'm actually going to get 2 squared, which is 4. And on the right side, the squared just takes away the radical. So it's negative 2 minus 3p. And then I just solve it like a regular equation. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I'll get negative 3p equals 6. And then divide. So that's going to leave me with p equals negative 2. There you go. Okay. So in this case, there is something on the outside of the radical. So I want to go ahead and get rid of that first before I square anything. Because if I square this whole right side, it's going to be a whole big mess. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 8 to both sides. So I'm going to end up with 9 equals the square root of x minus 7. Now that the radical is by itself and everything's on the inside of it, now is when I square. So I'm going to square the right side. Sorry, I'm bad at left and right. So I'm going to square the right side and square the left side, because whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to both sides. So anyway, on the left, the 9 squared becomes 81, because 9 times 9 is 81. And on the right, the squared and the radical just cancel each other out. So I just get x minus 7. So then to get x by itself, I just add 7 to both sides. So x is going to be 88. Ta-da! Last but not least, these ones people always want to subtract 10. But There's no plus sign there. So you're doing the opposite of whatever's happening. And if a number is next to anything else without a symbol in between, it means that they're multiplied. So the way to undo that is to divide. So, excuse me. So to get rid of the 10, I have to actually divide both sides by 10. So remember, when they're touching, divide. I don't know why whenever I teach stuff like this, I say it a million times and it always confuses people. But if they're touching, divide. And 50 divided by 10 is 5. So now I have an isolated radical. Oops. Where everything is inside the radical on the right side. Right side, yeah. So to get rid of the radical, I'm going to square both sides. So I'm going to square this side and square this side. 5 squared is 25. And on this side, the square just takes away the radical. It's all that it does. And then all I have to do is solve. Get x by itself. So the opposite of adding 27 is subtracting 27. So I end up with 2x equals negative 2. And then to get x all the way by itself, I divide. So x is going to be negative 1 in this case. Anyway, so that's solving with radicals. If you have questions about it, feel free to email me, come to the Google Meet, whatever. Feel free to pause this video. I know I probably went kind of fast. And always, Google this stuff. You'd be surprised at the kind of stuff you can find if you just Google something. So, anyway.